Number 9. Gemma Mitchell. 67-year-old Mi Quen Chong, who went by the nickname Deborah, initially agreed to lend £200,000 to her friend from church for home repairs. The friend was 38-year-old Gemma Mitchell, but Deborah changed her mind and urged Mitchell to sell the house in northwest London, which was in a state of disrepair but worth around £4 million. At the time, Deborah had her own problems to deal with. Her mental health was declining, and she reportedly suffered from schizophrenia. As Mitchell continued to pressure her to hand over the money for repairs, she put her foot down and made it clear that she wasn't going to help. Not wanting to take no for an answer, Mitchell went to Deborah's home one day in 2021 and bludgeoned her to death. She then dismembered the body and was seen wheeling them out of Deborah's home in 2 suitcases. Mitchell dumped the victim's headless remains more than 200 miles away in Devon, where they were discovered by vacationers the next day. In the meantime, she falsely reported Deborah missing and created a forged copy of her will, listing herself as the heir to almost all of the woman's £700,000 estate. But Mitchell never saw that money. Instead, she was arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 34 years. Number 8. Costa Christodoulou. In 2016, 38-year-old Gergana Prodanova vanished in Exeter, England from the home she shared with her partner, 42-year-old Costa Christodoulou. Her concerned co-workers called the police when she failed to show up for work. Christodoulou told investigators that Gergana's mother had just died and that she was in Bulgaria for the funeral. 4 weeks later, a railroad worker found the woman's dismembered remains inside a suitcase next to some train tracks. An investigation uncovered surveillance footage of Christodoulou rolling the suitcase through Exeter city center 3 days after Gergana disappeared. In the video, he can be seen pausing several times to catch his breath. Evidence revealed that Gergana wanted to end their 15-year relationship shortly before she died. She had met someone new, but Christodoulou refused to let her leave him and move out. The night she went missing, her new partner received a text from her phone stating that she was about to catch a flight to Bulgaria. Based on the wording, he suspected that someone else had written the message. His suspicions were confirmed when a forensic phone analysis revealed that Christodoulou sent the texts after murdering Gergana. Christodoulou maintained his innocence despite the mounting evidence against him. He even tried to appeal the case after being convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, arguing that the case was flimsy and unfair. But the court upheld the ruling, pointing out its decision that the evidence against Christodoulou was overwhelming. He will serve at least 19 years before he's eligible for parole. Number 7. Jessie Shane Kempson. In a case that made international news headlines, British tourist Gracie Mullane disappeared during a trip to Auckland, New Zealand in 2018. She had recently graduated from college and arrived in New Zealand after spending some time in South America. Her plan was to stay for 2 weeks, but she didn't even get to spend a full day there before she met with foul play. Grace's parents knew something was wrong when she didn't respond to her birthday wishes. They reported her missing. Detectives soon discovered that the young woman was last seen alive at a hotel on the first day of her trip with a man named Jessie Shane Kempson. After meeting with Grace, Kempson was seen rolling 2 suitcases out of the hotel. Her murdered remains were found buried in one of the suitcases in the Waitakere Mountains 9 days after she vanished. A medical examiner determined that she was strangled to death. Kempson argued in court that Grace's death was accidental and that it happened when they got too rough in the bedroom. During his trial, another woman who had met him on Tinder before the murder told the court that Kempson expressed a concerning interest in violent intimacy. She said that he seemed sympathetic toward a man who was arrested for suffocating his girlfriend during the act. She also said he mentioned that police were overwhelmed by the number of bodies that were appearing in the area where Gracie's remains were found. Kempson denied the allegations, but was convicted of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 17 years. The court denied his appeal. Number 6. Brian Jones. In 2022, a 62-year-old truck driver named Brian Jones entered the police station in Bessemer, Alabama, and confessed to killing his girlfriend and dumping her remains in the woods 21 years earlier. He explained that he was coming forward because he didn't want to disappoint his parents, who died in 2020, and led officers to a green suitcase filled with human bones. The victim was identified as Janet Luxford, who disappeared in 2001 while working at a hotel in Jacksonville, Florida. Jones said that Janet wanted to travel to California to see family members and asked him for money. He erupted into a fit of rage and bludgeoned her in the throat with a golf club. Janet had a history of addiction. When her family stopped hearing from her, they reportedly assumed she had fallen back into old habits and abandoned her responsibilities, including a 12-year-old daughter. She wasn't listed as missing until a year and a half after her disappearance, and no major investigations appear to have taken place in an effort to find her. Bessemer Police Lieutenant Christian Clemens told local station WBRC that because Janet's last known whereabouts were in Florida, the homicide wasn't even on the department's radar when Jones turned himself in. He described Jones' sudden confession as a once-in-a-career type situation. Jones was charged with murder and abuse of a corpse. His case is ongoing. Number 5. Stephen Zellich. Mother of 7 Laura Simonson disappeared in 2013 after leaving her home in Farmingdale, Minnesota to meet up with a man she was talking to online. She was never seen again. Police identified the man as 52-year-old Stephen Zellich, a former police officer from Wisconsin. Zellich resigned from his job 12 years earlier after a terrified prostitute was seen fleeing from his house naked. Zellich told detectives that he met with Simonson at a hotel and that she was alive and well when they parted ways. An investigation revealed that he spent a lot of time on BDSM websites where he went by the name Mr. Handcuffs and advertised himself as a master in search of a slave. But most members of the BDSM community aren't violent killers, and while he remained law enforcement's prime suspect, it wasn't enough to suggest that Zellich was involved in Simonson's disappearance. In June of 2014, a worker discovered 2 suitcases containing the remains of 2 deceased individuals while mowing the grass along a roadside in Geneva, Wisconsin. One of the victims was identified as Laura Simonson, and the other was a 19-year-old woman named Ginny Gomez, who vanished from Oregon in 2012. Surveillance footage from the hotel where Zellich and Simonson met showed the pair checking in together, but Simonson was never seen leaving. The video showed Zellich pulling a luggage cart out of the hotel alone. He claimed that he killed Simonson and Gomez by accident during a choking game, but the court didn't buy it. Zellich was convicted of murdering both women and hiding their corpses, and received sentences of 35 years, 25 years, and 10 years, which will keep him behind bars for life. Number 4. Michael Lee Dudley. While creating a TikTok video on a remote Seattle beach in 2020, a group of teenagers spotted a small black suitcase in the water. They curiously approached it and joked around about what might be inside, with one person commenting on how they hoped the luggage was filled with money. As the kids pried the suitcase open with a stick, they were overwhelmed with a foul odor. Suspecting they had found human remains, they dialed 911. Responding officers soon confirmed that the luggage and several other bags they found in the area contained dismembered body parts. The remains were identified as 35-year-old Jessica Lewis and 27-year-old Austin Wenner. A medical examiner determined that they had died about a month earlier from multiple gunshot wounds. Before their murders, the couple were renting a room from a landlord named Michael Lee Dudley. They fell behind on rent, and it led to a huge blowout between the two parties. Neighbors recalled hearing a man pleading one night, saying, "Please don't do this. Please just let me leave." Moments later, they heard gunshots. Locals called police, but Dudley didn't answer the door when officers arrived, so they simply left. It was sadly probably too late to save Lewis and Wenner's lives by then. Court documents obtained by local station K5 News revealed that the cuts on the body parts were disorganized and appeared to be made with different tools, suggesting that someone helped Dudley dismember the victims. He was charged with 2 counts of intentional homicide, and the case is ongoing. Number 3. Thomas Nutt. Just days before her wedding in 2021, 52-year-old Dawn Walker told her daughter that she had a feeling something bad might happen to her. Her relationship with 45-year-old Thomas Nutt had a tumultuous past, including previous allegations of abuse that had landed Nutt in jail. But she married him anyway. Nobody ever saw or heard from her again. 4 days after the wedding, Dawn's body was found stuffed in a suitcase behind some bushes outside the couple's home in West Yorkshire, England. By then, Nutt reported her missing, blaming her disappearance on her mental health. He also sent her loved ones texts, pretending to be her, and joined them on a search for her. Investigators learned that Nutt murdered Dawn during an argument just hours after they got married. He stuffed her body in a cupboard, then went on to the couple's planned honeymoon alone. When he returned, he put her in the suitcase and dumped it outside. Nutt claimed that he killed his bride by accident, telling police that Dawn had made false allegations of abuse against him in the past and was threatening to do so again. He said that she was threatening to divorce him and was suffering from symptoms of bipolar disorder. At some point during the argument, Nutt snapped and hit his wife, but he swore he didn't mean to kill her. He admitted to manslaughter in court, but denied the murder charge against him. The couple's volatile past revealed a disturbing pattern of abuse, making Nutt's claims doubtful at best. Dawn's family described how Nutt isolated her from them for years while he manipulated and controlled her. A former neighbor recalled hearing Dawn screaming from inside the couple's home one day about a year before the murder. When they went to see what was wrong, Nutt told them Dawn was having a panic attack, at which point she yelled not to believe him and that he was trying to kill her. Nutt was convicted of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years. Number 2. Melanie McGuire. In May 2004, 3 suitcases containing human body parts washed ashore along the Chesapeake Bay. The remains were identified as a computer programmer and father of 2 from New Jersey named Bill McGuire, who was last seen alive a few weeks earlier. Bill's wife, Melanie, told detectives that her husband stormed out of the house during an argument. She never saw him again. An investigation turned up evidence of a deeply troubled marriage. Melanie had been having an affair for quite some time, and someone had used the family's computer to search for things like how to commit a murder. Just days before Bill disappeared, Melanie bought a gun. Electronic toll records showed that she traveled to the Chesapeake Bay area on the suspected day of the murder. She admitted to moving her husband's car to a parking lot in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where it was found abandoned, but claimed she did so as a prank. In 2005, police finally had enough evidence to charge Melanie. Prosecutors accused her of drugging Bill with sedatives before shooting him and dismembering his body. Melanie's lawyer argued that Bill had mounting gambling debts, and he was likely murdered by someone he owed money to. She continues to stand by this story from behind bars, where she's serving a life sentence for first-degree murder. Number 1. Julian Summers. After receiving a suspicious call one day in 2021, Memphis police found human remains inside a suitcase that was left next to a dumpster in an alleyway. The victim, identified as 63-year-old Bruce Jeffries, died from blunt force trauma to the head. Officers followed a trail of blood from the suitcase to the victim's apartment, where they arrested his roommate, 30-year-old Julian Summers. A witness reported seeing Summers struggling to dispose of the suitcase and leaving it on the ground when he couldn't lift it to throw it in the dumpster, and surveillance footage backed up these claims. During a search of the property, police found evidence of a struggle, including broken glass, a shattered mirror, and blood. It was evident that someone had tried to clean up the blood. Detectives also found a small suitcase matching the bigger one Jeffrey's body was found in. According to an affidavit, a relative of the victim told investigators that Summers and Jeffries had lived together for 2 years and were known to be in a domestic relationship. Summers faces charges for second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find a left-behind suitcase filled with human bones while moving into your home? Or discover that someone you recently met through a dating app was a recently paroled killer? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.